100 dams, 50 million cubic meters of water, more than 19 billion CFA francs. But Ibrahim Traoré is not building 100 new dams. Burkina Faso is racing to rescue 100 reservoirs before the rainy season disappears into sediment-weakened embankments and lost storage. Official figures say 40% of dams are severely degraded, half are moderately degraded, and only 10% remain in good condition. If this campaign succeeds, the water could support farms, livestock, fisheries, and local income. But if the reservoirs keep filling with mud, billions may vanish beneath the surface. Because removing the sediment may be the easiest part. On January 31st, 2026, Burkina Faso launched the campaign at Gonsé, a reservoir east of Ouagadougou. The announcement sounded simple: dredge and reinforce 100 aging dams across 12 of the country's 17 regions. Restore at least 50 million cubic meters of storage and complete the work within roughly 5 months. But what the excavators uncovered at Gonsé showed why this is not a cosmetic project. From above, the reservoir still looked like a functioning body of water. The embankment remained in place. Farmers still worked nearby. Yet beneath the surface, years of sediment had quietly taken over space that was supposed to hold water. Gonsé was built in 1984 with an original capacity of about 300,000 cubic meters. Official reporting said that capacity had fallen to roughly 211,000 cubic meters. In other words, almost 1/3 of the reservoir's storage function had been lost, while the dam itself remained visible. The rehabilitation plan aimed to remove nearly 100,000 cubic meters of sediment, strengthen the embankment, and restore the reservoir's ability to support surrounding production. That matters because Gonsé is not an isolated concrete structure. It is tied to approximately 100 hectares of agricultural land and around 200 producers, including 110 women. Around a reservoir like this, water can support vegetables, fruit trees, livestock, fishing, and household income during months when rain no longer falls. A reservoir can remain blue after a storm and still be failing. If its floor rises, each rainy season begins with less empty space available to capture runoff. The country may receive water from the sky, yet lose the capacity to carry that water into the dry season. This is where the political story directly meets the physical reality. A government can announce 50 million cubic meters of recovered storage, but that number is not created by speeches. It is created by thousands of truckloads of soil, accurate measurements, functioning machinery, stable embankments, and work completed to the required depth. And the distinction between a target and a result matters. What has been verified is that the national campaign was launched, the budget and storage goal were announced, and active rehabilitation work was documented at sites including Gonsé and Salbisco. What has not yet been demonstrated through complete public evidence is that all 100 dams have been finished, that the full 50 million cubic meters have been recovered, or that every site will deliver the same level of agricultural benefit. Even completion itself can be misleading. A project may be declared 100% complete because machines have removed the contracted quantity of earth. But the reservoir may still lack reliable channels, pumps, access roads, water rules, or long-term maintenance. So the first test is not whether 100 construction sites appeared on camera. It is whether 100 reservoirs recovered the function they were built to perform. And that question leads to the hidden problem: why did so much soil reach the bottom of these reservoirs in the first place? Water sovereignty is not one project. It is a chain. Rain must fall over the right landscape. The soil must absorb enough water to slow destructive runoff. Streams must carry that water toward reservoirs without carrying entire hillsides with it. Dams must hold the flow. Canals and pumps must move it. Farmers must receive it at the right time. And markets must be ready for what the water helps produce. Break one link, and the whole promise weakens. The mud at the bottom of Gonsé did not appear by accident. Across dry and semi-arid landscapes, heavy rain can strike exposed soil with enormous force. Where vegetation is thin, fields are poorly protected, or drainage channels are damaged, Runoff can pull loose earth downhill. That soil enters streams, then settles inside reservoirs. Every cubic meter of sediment occupying the basin can become one less cubic meter available for water. This creates a dangerous cycle. A reservoir is dredged. Storage returns. The opening ceremony shows clean banks and moving machinery. But if erosion continues upstream, the next rainy season begins sending new soil toward the same basin. The government may spend billions removing yesterday's sediment, while tomorrow's sediment is already moving downstream. That is why excavation alone cannot create durable water security. The land above each reservoir matters as much as the reservoir itself. Tree cover grasses protected riverbanks, erosion barriers, drainage design, and farming methods can all influence how quickly soil moves. The exact causes will differ from one watershed to another, but the principle is the same. The cheapest sediment to remove is the sediment that never reaches the dam. Then comes the second hidden system. Water inside a reservoir does not automatically become water on a field. A farmer may live only a few kilometers away and still have no practical access if the canal is blocked, the pump is broken, fuel is unaffordable, electricity is unreliable, or no one has published a distribution schedule. A full reservoir can sit beside dry crops when the delivery system fails. That delivery system requires gates, channels, pumps, spare parts, trained operators, access roads, inspection routines, and clear responsibility when something breaks. In parts of Burkina Faso, security conditions can complicate inspection, transport, and regular maintenance. A technically sound plan may still struggle if engineers cannot reach a site, spare parts arrive late, or communities are displaced before the expected benefits begin at all. Salbisco shows how long this challenge can last. Built in the early 1960s to support water supply around Koudougou, the reservoir remained strategically important for decades. But age, sedimentation, and delayed rehabilitation reduced its usefulness. When officials inspected restoration work in 2026, they were not simply repairing an old structure. They were confronting the accumulated cost of maintenance postponed across generations. This problem is not uniquely Burkinabe. Reservoirs, bridges, water networks, and roads in the United States and Europe also deteriorate when maintenance is delayed. Infrastructure rarely fails on the day it opens. It fails slowly after inspection, budgets shrink, minor repairs are postponed, and no institution feels responsible until the damage becomes expensive. But even a perfectly maintained dam is only the beginning. Water must connect to seeds, fertilizer, labor, livestock, fisheries, storage, processing, transport, and buyers. Without those links, more water can produce more crops, but not necessarily more income. Farmers may harvest at the same time, flood the market, and watch prices collapse. So Burkina Faso is not merely trying to restore reservoirs. It is trying to restore a national chain that turns rainfall into stored water into production, and production into food security. And even if every engineering link works, one political question remains. Who receives the captured water first? 50 million cubic meters sounds like a national resource. But water only changes lives after someone decides where it flows, when it is released, and who is allowed to use it. Burkina Faso's program covers 100 dams across 12 of the country's 17 regions. That scale creates an immediate geography test. Were the selected reservoirs chosen because they were the most damaged, because they could irrigate the most land, because they served the largest populations, or because they were easiest to reach and complete quickly? Each answer would produce a different map of winners. A reservoir near a large town may be pushed toward drinking water. A reservoir surrounded by farmland may be reserved for irrigation. Livestock owners may need access during the dry season. Fish producers may want stable water levels. Commercial farms may argue that larger operations can convert water into more food. Small farmers may answer that public money should protect families with the fewest alternatives. All of those claims can sound reasonable, But water cannot satisfy every demand at the same moment. During a weak rainy season, those priorities can collide. Releasing water for irrigation may reduce reserves for households or animals. Holding water for towns may shorten the growing season. Every operating rule therefore carries a real social consequence. Then comes the land question. Restoring a dam can raise the value of nearby fields. Land that produced one rain-fed crop may suddenly support vegetables, fruit, rice, or animal feed during the dry season. But a farmer living beside the reservoir does not automatically control that opportunity. Who owns the irrigable land? Who holds only temporary use rights? Who can afford a pump, pipes, fuel, seeds, and fertilizer? Who can wait months for a harvest? And who needs income immediately? A publicly financed reservoir can create private gains if the most valuable land and equipment are controlled by a narrow group. Gonsé offers one encouraging detail. Official reporting identified 200 producers around the reservoir, including 110 women. But inclusion cannot be measured only by counting names. A woman may be listed as a beneficiary without owning the plot she cultivates. She may receive water but lack access to credit. She may produce the crop while someone else controls the sale, the transport, or the household income. Real access means having a voice in the water schedule, the cooperative, the pricing rules, and the dispute process. Price creates another gate. If irrigation water is free, poorer households may enter the system, but the dam may lack reliable money for pumps, canals, inspections, and repairs. If fees are too high, larger farms may absorb the cost, while smaller producers are quietly pushed out. The important question is not simply whether users pay. It is whether the pricing system protects access while returning enough money to maintain the asset. And even fair access to water does not guarantee fair income. If hundreds of farmers plant the same vegetable after the reservoir fills, they may harvest at the same time. Supply rises, prices fall. Unsold food spoils before it reaches a city. More water can create more production and still leave farmers poorer. That is why allocation must connect to crop planning, storage, processing, transport, price information, and buyers. Water becomes economic power only when the system carries value beyond the field. So the program's success cannot be judged only by which reservoirs fill. It must be judged by who gains secure access to land, who can afford to use the water, who participates in decisions, and who earns after the harvest. Because once water determines who can grow, sell, and control valuable land, this stops being only an engineering project. It becomes a governance test. The machines are visible. The contracts, measurements, and allocation decisions are much harder to see. That is where Burkina Faso's 100 Dam campaign could follow two very different paths. In the first future, every reservoir has a public file. Citizens can see the original capacity, the measured capacity before rehabilitation, the amount of sediment removed, the contractor, the budget, the deadline, and the final storage recovered. Engineers publish before and after surveys. Local communities know which canals will be repaired, how water will be allocated, what fees will be charged, and who is responsible when a pump or gate fails. The list of beneficiaries is not hidden inside an office. The rules for land access cooperative membership and water schedules are published in advance. Women, small farmers, livestock owners, and fishing groups know how decisions are made and how to challenge them. In that future, 19 billion CFA does not buy 100 ceremonies. It buys measurable storage capacity, functioning systems, and public trust. Transparency would also protect the government's strongest argument. If the program succeeds, published evidence would allow supporters to prove that public money restored real capacity. Without that evidence, even successful work can be weakened by suspicion, competing claims, and numbers that cannot be independently checked after the machinery leaves the site permanently. Now imagine the second future. Excavators arrive. Cameras record the work. Officials announce progress. But the public cannot see the measurements behind the claim. A reservoir is declared complete because the contracted work period ended, not because an independent survey confirmed the recovered capacity. Cost increases are explained vaguely. Some sites receive deep rehabilitation. Others receive enough visible work to appear successful from the road. The public sees trucks carrying soil away. Insiders see the payment schedule. The value around the reservoir may also shift quietly. Land near reliable water becomes more valuable. Families without formal documents may lose access. Better connected producers may secure the strongest plots, the largest pumps, or the most favorable water hours. The structure remains publicly financed, but the benefits become privately concentrated. None of this proves that Burkina Faso's current campaign is corrupt. These are governance risks that exist in any large public works program, whether in Africa, Europe, or the United States. But the risks become greater when one institution can choose the site award, the contract verify the work, and announce success without enough independent scrutiny. Every stage creates a gatekeeper. A ministry decides which dam enters the program. A procurement office controls the tender. A contractor reports the work. An engineer certifies the measurements. A local committee controls the water schedule. A cooperative decides who joins. A land authority determines who can farm around the reservoir. Gatekeepers are necessary. Hidden gatekeepers are dangerous. The central question is not whether officials support national development, it is whether the system gives citizens enough information to distinguish genuine delivery from favoritism, error, or political theater. How much sediment was actually removed? How much storage returned? Who received the water? Who gained control of the land? And who pays when the reservoir begins filling again? Burkina Faso does not need another slogan about 100 rehabilitated dams. It needs mechanisms that allow the public to test whether 100 reservoirs truly recovered their function. A national water program becomes credible only when promises are converted into rules that can be checked after the machinery leaves. The first mechanism is a before and after capacity survey. Every reservoir should be measured before rehabilitation begins. Engineers need to record the shape of the basin, the volume of water it can hold, the depth of sediment, and the condition of the embankment gates and spillways. The same measurements should be repeated after the work is completed. Success should not be defined by the number of excavators on site or the percentage of the contract already paid. It should be defined by recovered cubic meters. The second mechanism is a public dam ledger. For each reservoir, one page should show the location, original capacity, measured capacity before rehabilitation, approved budget contractor, deadline, amount of sediment removed, final capacity, expected irrigated area, and the date of the next inspection. If costs rise, the explanation should be visible. If deadlines move, the reason should be documented. If the recovered capacity is lower than promised, citizens should be able to see the difference. The third mechanism is watershed protection. Dredging treats the sediment already inside the reservoir. It does not stop new soil from arriving. Communities and technical agencies need a plan for the land upstream vegetation cover protected riverbanks, erosion barriers, controlled drainage, and farming methods that reduce runoff. The cheapest sediment to remove is the sediment that never reaches the water. The fourth mechanism is a maintenance reserve. Too many public projects receive money for construction, but not for the years that follow. A reservoir needs scheduled inspections, working gates, cleared canals, reliable pumps, trained operators, spare parts, and a named institution responsible when repairs are delayed. The maintenance budget should exist before the rehabilitation is declared complete. Otherwise, Burkina Faso may repeat the same cycle, allow a reservoir to lose function for years, then pay for another emergency intervention when the damage becomes impossible to ignore. The fifth mechanism is a water-to-food scoreboard. 50 million cubic meters is an engineering target. It is not the final development result. The public should also know how many hectares were actually irrigated, how many additional harvests occurred, how farmer income changed, how much food was stored or processed, how many women and small producers gained access, how livestock and fisheries benefited, and whether local food prices or imports changed over time. Those numbers would protect both supporters and critics from speculation. Supporters could show where the system is working. Critics could identify failure before another reservoir loses a third of its capacity. Most importantly, the scoreboard would shift attention away from ceremonies and toward performance. A dam is not successful because it looks full after one rainy season. It is successful when the water is still available during the dry months, when farmers can use it at an affordable cost, when the surrounding land remains productive, and when the institution responsible can maintain the system without waiting for another crisis. That is how a public works campaign becomes a national institution. And the final test will not appear in an engineering report. It will appear in the lives of the people waiting for the water to last through the next long, dry season. The final test of Burkina Faso's 100 dam campaign will not be the number of machines deployed or the number of ceremonies held. It will be whether ordinary people can feel the difference when the rains stop. Begin with the small vegetable farmer. Before rehabilitation, 1 week rainy season can shorten the growing calendar, reduce yields, and erase income for months. A restored reservoir could allow a second crop during the dry season, stabilize production, and make it possible to grow vegetables, fruit, or animal feed when fields would otherwise remain empty. But water alone does not complete that transformation. The farmer still needs seeds, fertilizer, tools, credit, transport, storage, and a buyer willing to pay a fair price. If those pieces are missing, the reservoir may increase production without increasing security. Now consider a woman working through a local cooperative. At Gonsé, official reporting identified 110 women among the 200 producers linked to the reservoir. That matters. But being counted as a beneficiary is not always the same as controlling the benefit. Does she hold secure rights to the plot she cultivates? Can she vote on the water schedule? Can she obtain a loan in her own name? Does she control the income after the crop is sold? Is she trained to operate pumps and participate in maintenance decisions? If the answer is no, the project may improve access to water while leaving the deeper structure of economic control unchanged. The livestock owner faces a different test. Reliable water could reduce the distance animals travel during the dry season, improve herd health, and support the production of fodder near irrigated land. It might also reduce pressure around overcrowded watering points. But without clear rules, the same reservoir can create conflict between herders, crop farmers, fishing groups, and households collecting water. For displaced families, reliable local water could also reduce pressure on host communities, but only if access rules recognize people without secure land documents. The fish producer sees another opportunity. A functioning reservoir can support local protein seasonal employment and income from aquaculture or controlled fishing. Yet fisheries require fingerlings, feed water quality monitoring, disease control cold storage, and rules that prevent overuse. Again, the dam is only the first link. Then there is the family living far from the reservoir. They may never see the excavation site. Their test arrives in the market. Are vegetables available deeper into the dry season? Are fish, meat, and grain prices more stable? Does local supply increase enough to reduce dependence on imported food? Or do transport losses, poor storage, and weak market competition absorb the benefit before it reaches consumers? A successful water strategy should create more than a dramatic landscape. It should create time, more months of production, more predictable income, more stable food supply, more resilience when rainfall becomes uncertain. But none of those outcomes should be assumed from a full reservoir. They must be measured household by household, season by season. Because the real value of 50 million cubic meters will not be visible at the bottom of a dam. It will be visible in whether people eat better, earn more, travel less for water, and enter the next dry season with greater security than the last. Burkina Faso's 100 dam campaign has moved beyond a political announcement. The government has launched the program, committed more than 19 billion CFA francs, identified 100 reservoirs across 12 regions, and documented rehabilitation at Gonsé and Salbesgo. The target of 50 million cubic meters gives the public a number against which future claims can be tested. That is what has been delivered: a national campaign, a public budget, visible construction, and a measurable objective. But the second layer is what remains unproven. The available evidence does not yet establish that all 100 dams have been completed to the required standard. It does not confirm that the full 50 million cubic meters have been recovered, how quickly sediment may return, or whether maintenance reserves exist at every site. It also does not prove that the recovered water has increased food production, raised farmer income, reduced imports, or distributed benefits fairly among women, small producers, livestock owners, fishing communities, and displaced families. Those outcomes should be measured, not assumed. The third layer is the test that comes next. 5 years from now, will these reservoirs still hold the storage recovered today? Will canals and pumps still function? Will upstream erosion be lower? Will local committees publish water schedules and fees? Will farmers produce more without prices collapsing? Will households enter the dry season with greater security? That is where sovereignty becomes more than political language. Gold can be exported, foreign partners can change, machinery can arrive. But without stored water, agriculture remains exposed to every failed rainy season and every long, dry month. Traore's gamble is larger than 100 dams. It is a test of whether Burkina Faso can turn public spending into durable capacity, rainfall into stored value, and stored water into opportunity. The real achievement will not be 100 ribbon cuttings. It will be reservoirs that still work 5, 10, and 20 years from now. So is this the beginning of a national water system capable of feeding Burkina Faso through the dry season, or an expensive race to remove sediment faster than the landscape can bring it back? Tell us what country you are watching from. Share your verdict and subscribe as we track what Burkina Faso promises, builds, and changes in ordinary life. Because sovereignty is not measured by how much rain falls. It is measured by how much of that rain a nation can keep and what it can build with the water afterward. Disclaimer: this video is fictional storytelling created for education, commentary, and entertainment. It is not a factual report or official information. Any similarities to real events are coincidental. Please enjoy it as creative content only.